let's move on. And obviously the story that is still, well, it's been the story of the last 10 to 11 days is surrounding Geelong and Jake Kolodjasny and the concussion waiver. Jake Kolodjasny unavailable for selection at any level this week. Joel, as a Geelong icon, are you comfortable with the way this has been played
out? Well, I wouldn't say comfortable. It obviously puts you on edge. I didn't pick it that it was going to be Geelong when it came out. I'm unsure. You know, the thing about it is that, and I know that people say very biased, very Geelong focused, but I had long running.
Well, you know these people very, very well.
With these people in Craig Drummond and Steve Hocking and management of that football club. And for a mistake to happen as simple as handing in paper, you do say, yep, not good enough, and they will get, you know, a fine or whatever it is. But I do have the duty of care for the player that I know that would have been forefront, you know, knowing Craig and knowing Steve really well. And did I have a problem with the manager not being involved? Like, I don't know what the relationship that Jake has with his manager. I know a lot of the boys actually don't speak to their manager a hell of a lot.
Outside of contract time.
Outside of contract time. It comes around contract time, and Leigh, you would have dealt with players in this situation.
But this was to do with his contract.
Yeah, outside of his contract, you could say. And the thing is, Jake had a twin brother, Cade, who obviously went through the journey, I think it was in 2020, through the COVID period time, where his contract got taken off the table through the protocols. So he would have gone through all the insurers there, all the legal people, and maybe Jake and the family felt more comfortable that it was in their hands, more so than anyone else.
We spoke about it last week. I mean, you've got the rules of the game and the rules of the land, and they might have been broken in the AFL. If that happens, they'll sanction Geelong for breaking a rule of the game by not lodging the agreement. But sort of the ethical, moral part of it, to me, a lot of it hinged, to me anyway, on whose idea was it? You know, was it like Jake knew that his career is sort of in doubt, not ruled out by the AFL panel, but
so not green, not red.
But as he said to the club, I want to keep playing, and I'm happy to have an agreement that has some kind. I mean, that's not a total moving all my responsibilities or what have you. But or did the club come to him say, listen, for you to play again, we're going to have to work through this kind of agreement? I always thought, ethically and morally, I'd love to know the answer to that question.
Will we find out through the KC too? I'm sure that we probably will.
I think you would hope so.
Isn't the KC only investigating whether the AFL rules were broken, which was why wasn't the agreement registered with the AFL? I don't know whether he's looking into the behind the scenes of the agreement, like whose idea was it? Because obviously it was. We read that it was thought about and talked about for a couple of months. So this was not an overnight decision.
Well, Caro's about to join us. She might be able, will be able to put some more flesh on the bones regarding that. One more question from me to you, Joel, before Caro does join us on the line. Chris Scott, as we know, is the master of controlling a narrative in a press conference. He's one of the best we've ever seen. The almost I know nothing type defence during the week, to quote an old TV line. Were you surprised he took that tack, or you 100% believe him that he was completely out of the picture?
Well, yeah, I can't say in full context whether he was or he wasn't. He would have inklings to know probably what's going on, but when it came to contracts, absolutely not. The coach wouldn't. He would have an understanding where the players stand in, you know, where they should be played and who he wants and stuff like that. But he wouldn't know what a player's on. And in saying that, we're going down to the nth degree on what is in and out of a contract. A lot of them look a hell of the same, and so they should. You know, it's nearly copy and paste across the competition at all clubs. So. But for Chris to say that he actually doesn't know the ins and outs, I actually believe it. And I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but that's just the way. It's not the coach's job to be across that stuff.
Isn't it part of it, if this was being done post-season, like in an October-November situation, you'd reckon it'd be different if it was selection. No, we can't select him. Then the senior case, well, I don't want to know why, in a way, because you do that. 20 years ago now, well over that, the club doctor, the Lion, said to me, so-and-so, don't play him I'll let you know when you can play him.
Right.
I think he might have been smoking a bit of weed. I think that was the issue. And basically, I'll let you know when it's out of his system.
You've just given us the headline.
Just don't ask why. Just don't ask why.
And how did you take that?
Well, it just did what the doctor suggested.
Yeah.
We just didn't pick him for a few weeks. It was in the pre-season.
Did you go on and ask questions?
I was going to say, yeah, did you ask further questions?
No, not. Well, he might have confided in me why, but the point was don't ask questions. I mean, in other words, all I'm saying for the medical person, don't pick him for a few weeks. It was in the pre-season, admittedly. It was in February, but nevertheless, sometimes don't ask the question.
A couple of weeks later, did you call the player into your office and ask him a couple of direct questions?
Never spoke to him about it.
And then
that was the thing. It was a doctor-player confidentiality. All the doctors saying, don't pick him because he might get drug tested clearly, and it would be in his system for a while.
I know Chris played under you as a player for a long period of time, but I absolutely hear his thoughts of how he coaches obviously comes out in what he's learnt from Leigh in the past.
Arrow, you've been listening to all that, particularly about Jake Kolodjasny. Can you add anything further in this still developing story?
Well, two things. I would refer. James Gallagher wrote an interesting column today from the player's perspective. We just should say first, the wider issue here is Jake Kolodjasny and what he's been through, and the likelihood that his career might be over, and obviously what the AFL are going to do now that this has become a front-of-mind conversation, because clearly what happened was regrettable, whatever you say, and everyone agrees it was regrettable, and that's why the clause was taken out of the final document. The problem that Geelong has, and this is nubbing down to the issue of, what did Tom Harley call it the other day, Bruce, a compliance issue, is that, and I think that's understating it, Geelong are basically now saying, first of all, they didn't know the rules. They didn't know, and they're still asking whether this in fact was a variation to the contract. Geelong are also saying, it's the level of involvement the AFL had. We had Andrew Dillon in the box last week. He denied any knowledge of the contract, of Kolodjasny's issues. I mean, obviously he'd known he'd suffered concussions. And I've asked him again, and he absolutely had no idea. Geelong is saying we were in touch with the AFL through their insurance and their legal people. I assume that's Stephen Mead, the legal counsel, or one of his subordinates. They're saying, why didn't the AFL ask us for the contract? And someone from Geelong even suggested to me that the AFL knew that this line, this offending line that has been taken out and which won't stand up in court anyway, according to Andrew Dillon, that the AFL talked them through that, putting it in. Now, the AFL is saying that that's not the case. They've told the Players Association that that's not the case. So that's why this investigation, it's really important that it's independent, because from what Geelong is saying to me and saying to others, the AFL are as much on trial here as Geelong are. I don't think that's fair. I mean, I think Geelong should have known the rules. As I've said several times this week, it's bizarre to me that Steve Hocking, in his role as the head of footy at the AFL for 5 years, didn't know this sort of detail had to be lodged with the AFL. And just because, as Geelong keep telling us, they weren't seeking a competitive advantage. I mean, all the Geelong backers keep saying it's not like it was Max Holmes or Bailey Smith. I mean, I don't really think that's the point, that they weren't going to get a competitive advantage. Everyone now agrees that the clause shouldn't have been there. Whether or not, Leigh, Jake asked for it or the club suggested it, it shouldn't have been there. It wasn't worth the paper it was written on, and it was wrong to me that a player should, even though it wouldn't have worked in court, waved away his legal rights. So I still think Geelong's in a bit of trouble, and I'm not sure about Steve Hocking. I mean, I think because of his standing in the game and his reputation, he'll be fine in terms of his job. Whether or not he gets a personal fine, as others have in the past. But in terms of lack of compliance, I think they've completely dropped the ball here, quite apart from the clause itself.
Is that what the KC is investigating, though, Caro? Like, we talk about the law, the AFL rules and regulations. Have they been broken? I thought the KC's investigating that aspect, not the moral, ethical aspect, which is a kind of another argument or another debate.
Completely. I mean, and whether Geelong, I mean, I don't know how you could even prove this, whether or not Geelong deliberately didn't lodge the document or whether it was Geelong say they didn't know they had to, and which I think is a bit rich, as they're saying to me, why didn't the AFL ask for the document? They knew that we were looking at doing something with Jake. I think that's a ridiculous excuse. So,
Caro, we haven't got a lot.
Fascinating.
We haven't got a lot of time today. Still a couple of topics to get through. Before you answer the question as to where we're at with the Essendon coaching race, which is coming very much to the pointy end, Murray Davis, Adelaide assistant coach, joined us on 3AW Footy Preview last night and was asked about whether he was still in the race to get the Bombers' main job.
Are you still in the Essendon process?
Yes, Sam, I am. Through the whole process, Essendon have been outstanding in regards to communicating all the timelines, and that has everything that they communicated to me at this point has rung true.
Who will it be, Caro, and when will we know?
Look, I can't pretend to know, Bruce, but all the journos I work with and work against who've been working on this story hard for weeks say that the front runner is still Mark McVeigh. Now, that's not to say he's going to get the job, but they see the fact that Essendon have put off. They were going to make an announcement, I think, in the last few days or at some point over the last week. They see the fact that they're waiting until after Essendon plays Sydney, because Mark McVeigh is an assistant coach at Sydney, is an interesting one there. Sydney have had the conversation about what they're going to do if McVeigh does get the job, and I think if they appoint him this week, I don't think he'll be part of Sydney's finals campaign. That was the thought a week ago. But James Hurd's not out of it. Jamie Graham's not out of it. Mark McVeigh is clearly the front runner. But look, as Leigh I'm not going to repeat what Leigh said a few weeks ago, but who would know? Things could change, as they often do at Essendon.
As they often do in football. That's what I'm hearing as well. Spike McVeigh is certainly, from various sources, got his nose in front, if you want to believe them. And before we let you go, Josh Fraser now, well and truly, he hasn't just thrown his hat into the ring. He's jumped in the ring, every single part and fibre of him.
It's been outstanding.
And he did an incredible presentation. Apparently, he did the same presentation as all the other coaching candidates did for that job. You sort of do feel for guys like Jamie Graham and Corey Enright and Daniel Giansiracusa, who've obviously gone well into the process. But it just would be, I don't know how they'd explain him not getting the job now, Bruce, even if they lose this week. Do you?
Yeah.
I would expect the presentation is not about what happened inside the white line, but what kind of staffing things I want to do within my football department. But a lot of the big picture issues, I mean, in terms of how the players play, when he's coaching, we've had a good 3 months of seeing. That's good. So, but I think that's
and the
where
media
you're presenting.
Question, how do you handle the media? What would be your strategy? Well, again, I mean, we've seen it with our own eyes, and I think we all agree he's been pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah. Are they looking for like 2-3 year plans, Leigh? You've been a part of these things.
I don't know what Carlton are doing.
Yep.
They've all got their own. But you'd think he'd be 100 to 1 on, wouldn't you, really? If he wants to do it. It's been such a fantastic dress rehearsal or audition or whatever you want to call it.
And it usually hasn't gone in the favour of the stand-in coach too. So hats off to him.
Definitely, and a huge game tomorrow for the Blues against the Bulldogs. Caro, thanks for that, short and sweet. We'll be back with you next week from Marvel Stadium ahead of that monster clash between Carlton and Fremantle. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
It'll be a big pre-game next week. Enjoy the Tigers and the, the Caro Beaver Cup.
That's it. I'm glad you said that. It's